All right, what's happening, guys? We're live on the Austin Men's Development Facebook group, and if you're watching this on YouTube, we probably recorded this a few weeks ago. It's on the 17th of July on Friday on our Rebuild Challenge call. And what we're talking about now is the value of our relationships, like the value of our relationships with our girlfriends, our wives, whatever that might be, and how we have pride in it when there's been damage, and specifically when that damage has been infidelity. And we hear all this stuff on it, all this stuff, right? All the answers on it. We hear like all these arguments for monogamy. We hear all these arguments against it. We hear all these things about what's right and wrong and how we hold the frame, but rarely do we get to the discussion of a man in this situation and how he makes it better. And no matter what society thinks, no matter what the social issues are, which I think are very, very important. And today I'm actually releasing a podcast with Hans Gomain, which you should listen to it because there's a lot of this that goes into that. But we need to talk about you. We need to talk about where you're at and how you solve the problems in front of you instead of looking at society's problems and trying to find the answer in what's wrong with all of that, right? Your personal relationship with your woman demands a certain level of respect, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. How do we find pride in our relationship after damage, and in this case, infidelity? Okay, so we're here, complex thing, and just to tell the story of this is this gentleman is in a monogamous relationship with his girlfriend, cares about it. Most important thing to him. Super special, right? And again, I don't want to hear about how that's weak or strong or whatever. This is this man's journey. And this man's journey is very important because the journey gives us depth to who we are, all right? There's many men in this. I want you to listen to it. And we don't want to take the shortcut of just going like, man, that's strong. And this is what Jordan Peterson said. Or this guy's like a beta cuck because Rollo Tomasi, who's married but gives advice on never to be married, says that, like, don't worry about any of that stuff, right? What we want to worry about is this man is in this point of masculinity, of manhood, of going, man, I have pride in this relationship. I want to be there for my woman. This feels good. This is accessing points of me that want to give, that want to provide, that want to care for. And this is a masculine trait. Never forget that that is an amazing, amazing masculine trait. But at one point in their relationship, some infidelity happened. And this is interesting because when we get to the infidelity, you could sit there and go like, all right, if she cheated on him, right? She's a bitch and he's a beta and all this sort of stuff, right? And if he cheated on her, it's like some people might go, what a disgusting man and all this sort of stuff. And she needs to run and be protected. And some guys might say like, well, so what? You know, so there's all sorts of different stuff. The interesting thing about this situation is in the past, he was somebody that was unfaithful to her, all right? And this brings up an interesting thing. Like, he's like, man, I want to be with her. From that experience, I now know that it was wrong and I want to be with her. This is very common. And when you talk within a men's group where we don't judge about infidelity, you get an interesting thing. Some people are trying to rebel from their relationships and they're like, man, I dislike my wife. There's also this, man, this is one of the funniest things. I was like 20 years old. This one guy is Puerto Rican. Of course he's Puerto Rican. It's such a beautiful thing that he said. And some people could be highly judgmental over it, but I loved it, man. I was like, dude, why are you like cheating on your wife with all these like ugly girls? Your wife is amazing. And he's like, Steve, how could I treat my beautiful wife like a pig in the bed? And like, it's just, he went on and on about like how he had that experience. And so in that sense, infidelity, and I didn't talk to him much about it at the time, but in that sense, infidelity meant that he was playing with a different side of himself. Now, these are all wrong things. There's a lie happening. There's a break in contract. There's deception. There's all these things happening. But to some of these men, there was a different purpose being served, right? Now, in this realm where we don't have judgment of infidelity, where we're just trying to process what's going on with this guy, because that's important. Now, remember, if we take on the like, what a disgusting pig, that man has no options, if that man has something that he needs to work through emotionally, if he has something that he needs to work through psychologically, you just shut the door on him. All right. You know, our behavioral changes don't work that way. Right. I get that judgment helps us have boundaries of how we work within each other, but to change behaviors, we cannot have that. And this is big time in addiction recovery, where hardcore crimes are being committed, very bad things are being committed, but there needs to be a space where we can work within that. So when it comes to things like infidelity, that's very important, you know, in my groups. Like, we don't want to encourage somebody to cause damage and really hurt somebody, but we want to work within that space where we can freely talk about this. So then there's other times where people are rebelling. They're like, man, I never, you know, I'm locked into this relationship. I'm imprisoned and da-da-da-da. And I just want to fuck other people. I hate my wife. You know, it's good. I don't want to fuck this up, but they can't sort it out. You know, what's interesting about that is that type of rebellion, when you give it space to talk about it and you go like, man, it's cool. Like, we're in full secrecy here on these calls. Like, you know, we're not going to share it. You know, if anybody does share it, they're banned for life. I mean, it's a heavy consequence. Like, man, you know, let's talk about this. That rebellion subsides, and we get to like that rebellion. What it represents is like, man, I love other women and I love my wife, and I can't seem to figure out this difference of loving other women and loving my wife, and is it bad? And we have to go like, man, we'll listen to you and not be judgmental, you know, and look at the real consequences of it, but let's sort it out. A lot changes. It's really a beautiful process. So here we have this situation where this man once hooked up with another chick. And his point after that was like, fuck, I love my girlfriend. Interesting thing. Very common with men. And we can't talk about this as men. It's so screwed up. Why? Like, it's so bad. I mean, it's so bad we can't talk about this. With all of the men's industry people out there who basically were like professional PUAs, you know, like myself, this happens a lot. I don't hear men talking about this, which really, it's sad. There's still repression in this massive rebellion that men had to assert themselves sexually. There's still men not being able to articulate the truth of this. But when you get them talking about it, they're like, oh, fuck, that's totally true. Way back when, I had this relationship with a girl that was an amazing woman. And we had an open relationship times. There are other times where we didn't. And I would, you know, fuck other people and so on and just be like this dog running around like a crazy person. But I kept remember going like, man, I love having sex with these other women. And why not? You know, the world's there. The opportunity's there. But every time I did it, it made me love my ex. So I'm like, God, dude, I like it. And it's crazy. This is going to sound really bad, but this was like at the height of a lot of like my pickup stuff. But I had that feeling over 100 times. In the 4 years we were together, man, I like had sex with like 150 other people and had relationships with people. And part of that was agreed upon and part of it wasn't, right? So judge where you want, whatever. But what I got from that was like some of those times, or all those times, it made me love her more. It made me see that big side. Now, in that, I didn't take the mature steps, you know, still in that immature male representation. It didn't allow me to take the mature steps of really inventorying why I did love her and where I could honor that. And I was still at battle with myself and in that sort of rebellion. And later on when I was married, it was like such an important thing to be monogamous. You know, it was like very important. I didn't think I could do it. And that's in between those relationships is where I did a lot of the work. And within the monogamous relationship, I did a lot of the work. So in this time, right, we had this ability to understand more of why we're doing it. Okay. Fast forward to where we're at now with this gentleman. This is so important to talk about. I know, I mean, it's a live recording and there's kind of a lot of things coming in different areas, but men, a couple things you have to understand. If you're in this situation like this guy on the call, do you bring it up to your ex? In my opinion, no, because it's going to cause problems and there's guilt propelling that. And like the damage that you can cause from that is really bad. Now, if you're responsible enough to sit with that damage and work through it, which is the damage and distrust that comes from that, there's a lot of work to rebuild from that. And so if you are saying that you're going to tell her that you were not faithful to her, you need to spend, it's a commitment to be able to spend years working with her to build trust. Like that's what I feel, because the damage is so great from that. Now, if I tell her that just because I need to be honest with myself and that's my code, and then I leave, she's walking away hurt and has a bad view on men and all that stuff. And it's a weird thing, because it's like, dude, do we honor truth, or do we honor, what are we honoring here? This is a big problem with casual dating. When it comes down to casual dating, there's a lot of these different things that really come into play of, how do we navigate these rules? And I think that there's so many lost men and women who feel guilty about all this shit in their life and carry around a lot of baggage, that they spill out their guilt and whatever they've done wrong to somebody that they barely know, and think that, not realizing the real deeper problem of why they have, guilt and pain and all this other stuff. And so, man, really, really important thing, right? So I think, to me, it's much more wise to not share that, but not share it out of secrecy, not share it out of selfishness, not share it out of like carrying power, but not share it in a sense that you are honoring that other person, and through that you honor yourself. Now, this comes into the pride with your relationship. And what I'm trying to say to this gentleman is, like, there's a reframe that you can say in this, and I hate reframes in self-development. They're really necessary to guide us and to find like the points on the map of where to go. But the reframe is bad because it's lazy self-help. It doesn't last long until this internalizes as a belief and you become it. It's kind of like going like, man, this is what a noble man does, when you're not there yet. And it's just a fantasy. And so you're just kind of acting or wearing a mask and those types of things. So, but it's a good starting point. And so the reframe is that this whole time you have been honoring her. You're trying to take the right road and the right decision. Maybe that's telling her, maybe that's not telling her, but you're trying to make the best decision possible. You're consulting with your groups. You're waking up every day with her. You're honoring her through your relationship. Those are the things which are important. Now, the real honor and pride that comes from a relationship as a man is going to come after the fact, after you've done it for a year or two or whatever it is, in that you're actually just, man, you're with this person. You're with this person. And they've influenced you. And man, this is crazy. I was talking to my buddy yesterday who's he's amazing. he's an amazing client, right? So he's a really high, he's one of the best athletic coaches in the world. And we often talk about these concepts that come into masculinity. And he's like, dude, it's so screwed up. This whole world is bent on like what alpha is and what beta is and what the king is and what these archetypes are. And they're so obsessed with it. The true alpha, or whatever that is not afraid of being hurt and protects themselves. It's that he knows he's strong enough to be hurt, to carry pain, to carry sometimes secrets. And we need to be wise with that. It's not just some random secret. It's not like I carry around a secret and that makes me strong. It's that there's wisdom in it, that for the betterment of the people in my life, I'm carrying around this pain. I'm sacrificing myself. I'm willing to feel pain from a woman because I'm so proud to give myself to her. And that if she does disrespect it, I can walk away still as a king or a leader or a human being with a sense of self. But all these boys go around and they go, I want to be king. And it looks like I have to have a sword and a crown and have people follow me, when that's not actually it. And so when we take this pride in our relationship, the reframe is that, like, dude, you trying to go and look at why you're not going to share this with your girlfriend, that you had this affair or whatever you want to call it, man, you not sharing that is part of the respect. But if you don't honor that as respect, it turns into the dark side, and it turns into a secret, and it turns into something that could erupt, or it turns into a form of rebellion, or it turns into something that represents your dark side that you haven't made peace with. But instead, really, it's this amazing representation of you trying to honor her. You're going to make mistakes, right? And this is a big mistake. And what's the exact wrong here? You lied. You're being deceptive, right? You broke the contract of your relationship. And you fear losing your relationship and you fear answering the consequences to those things that may come your way with it. But you're also thinking about the damage with her. And that, like, you have to consider all of that, you know, with whatever action you take. If you don't consider the whole thing, right, and you take an action, that's how you move into that disrespect of self and relationship with others. So the pride there is happening. Now, the real pride is going to come where you go through 6 months, you know, and you work on yourself with this and you start to get past your internal demons or whatever of why you did cheat or, you know, your guilt over that. And that's where the real work comes. And the real work also comes with being together with your woman and sharing that time in the simplest things. You know, and I kind of brought this up when we were talking about purpose and these types of things on the call a little bit earlier, is that when it comes down to purpose, like if you just ask random people, they're like, my purpose is to help people. And like, you know, my job, I help people. That's what I do, right? That's literally what I do. You know, every day I'm talking to people nonstop, right? And people pay me for it. A lot of it I do volunteer wise. Like I did a call just before this call where there's paid guys on it. That was free, you know, and talked to this guy. I'm helping people all day long. That doesn't look like an image. That doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like on Instagram or Facebook or whatever. That doesn't look like, you know, a point of power or nobility. That's just me helping people, you know? And so a relationship, to have pride in a relationship, doesn't look like, you know, a sunset off and holding hands. It looks like waking up every day and doing the things which keep it together, which is beautiful, right? And that there's so much bonding and love within that we don't recognize, you know, that we don't recognize as men. Just waking up and being fucking angry and being like, man, why am I talking to this girl? She's always pissed off. It's like she's always on the rag or whatever it is. Waking up and going through those things and being able to accept them. Like, that's an act of love. And you have to be wise with it. But it's not as simple as all of the men's development stuff, or a lot of it out there saying like, that's what betas do and you got to lead. Really, man, like, I'd love to see those guys' personal lives with their women. Like, to be strong with your woman is to let her live and to let her be free and to let her be her and to let her always have the choice to choose the best you. And it is your job to carry that wisdom of what is the best you. So, dudes, I appreciate you watching this on the AMD board, or if you're watching on YouTube, come on by, join the discussion on the AMD board if you can. But most importantly, if you want to get active, man, things like the Rebuild Challenge or Men's Development Excellence will set you on a path of where you're talking with guys on this level and working on yourself. Now, if you don't want to work on yourself, man, just watch the videos online, you know. But we do practice a certain level of like, man, we're expected to be working on ourselves and checking ourselves in better ways and doing it, you know, as men. And that this thing, wherever you're starting at, whether it's women, whether it's your body, your mindset, getting past the divorce, it is a commitment to believing that you have greater potential, and I expect you to work that greater potential. If you're not ready for that, that's cool. All right. Have a good Friday. Later.